It turns out, starfish don't have a head. They are the head. When you first look at a starfish, you think it's got 5 arms. Scientists have always been curious about why starfish look like this, and in particular, where their heads are. Most animals, including us, have bodies that are bilaterally symmetrical, meaning you can split them down the middle and get 2 matching sides. But starfish, along with sand dollars and sea anemones, are different. They're radially symmetrical, meaning their bodies have identical parts spread out from the center. Starfish, or sea stars, are special because they have this 5-way symmetry, and you can divide them into 5 equal parts. To make this discovery, scientists used a technique called RNA tomography, which helps study genes. They focused on the genes controlling the outer layer, including the nervous system. Surprisingly, the genes associated with the head were active in the starfish's head and its arms. Yet, genes linked to the body trunk were hardly active. This suggests that starfish have a unique separation between their head and body. The study sparked new questions about how these creatures evolved and what their ancestors with trunks might have been like based on their fossil records. It also showed that genes active in the head of an acorn worm were also active in a starfish's skin, covering its entire body. These genes are the most active at the center of each arm, changing towards the arm's end to resemble genes found in the rear of other animals. Starfish lack genes for a torso. All this challenges traditional views on starfish anatomy. There's a rumor about Paul McCartney recording an ultrasonic whistle for his Shetland sheepdog at the end of the Beatles song, A Day in the Life. Dogs can hear ultrasonic sounds since their hearing ability is incredible. To move just one of their ears, dogs need to involve 18 muscles. It allows them to swiftly locate the origin of sounds, and it's another skill where they outshine us. Their awesome ears sometimes shadow their noses. Dogs' sense of smell is up to 100,000 times more acute than that of humans. While humans have around 5 million scent receptors, a bloodhound boasts up to 300 million. Another study proves that dogs and bottlenose dolphins may share a fascinating similarity with humans. They call out the names of loved ones when they become separated. This makes them the first non-human animals to do so. The research has uncovered that dolphins copy one another's signature whistles when they're separated from close pals. In the Sarasota Dolphin Research Program recordings, pairs of dolphins were held in separate nets, but they could still communicate with each other. Turns out, some of their chit-chats were mimicking the unique whistles of their dolphin buddies. Next up, we have flamingos with their peculiar dining habits. You often see them feeding with their heads positioned upside down. This distinctive behavior is linked to the anatomy of their mouths and the mechanics of maneuvering their long, elegant necks into the water. These birds are skilled filter feeders, employing their tongues as effective sieves to capture food. When a flamingo lowers its neck beneath the water, it positions its mouth essentially upside down. Then the bird closes its mouth and skillfully propels water through comb-like extensions on its beak. It also utilizes its tongue to expel the water while retaining all the gathered food. If you've watched the movie My Octopus Teacher on Netflix, you might already know that octopuses can bond with humans. But this time, we'll only focus on the anatomy of this creature. Octopuses have 3 hearts. One heart pumps blood throughout the body, and the other 2 tag teams send that blood to the animal's gills. Octopuses also have 9 brains. Each of their 8 tentacles has its very own mini-brain. These mini-brains allow each tentacle to move independently at lightning speed. There's a 9th brain in the mix, and this one oversees the entire octo nervous system. Opossums are intelligent, in a way, too. They're known for pretending to pass away when their life is threatened. When they face predators, opossums attempt to intimidate their foes by showing their teeth, hissing, and growling. Yet, when these tactics fall short, opossums resort to shutting their eyes, collapsing onto their side, and pretending to have passed away. To look more convincing, an opossum might drool, let its tongue hang out, and even excrete waste to enhance the illusion of a sudden demise. Remarkably, opossums can uphold this state for several hours, waiting until they're confident that the threat is gone. Monkeys can be loud when calling one another, but a howler monkey's shout can travel approximately 3 miles in specific situations. Males are usually louder than females. The thing is, the sound is created by pulling air through a space in an enlarged bone in the animal's throat. This bone is larger in males compared to females, and that's why males sound louder. Polar bears have black skin beneath all that fur. Their fluffy white coat is actually translucent. It only seems white because it bounces back visible light. The skin itself is jet black. These creatures are also impressive when it comes to swimming. They can hit speeds of up to 6 miles per hour in the water, which is pretty fast for such big creatures. They can swim for miles and keep going for hours. Their big paws are designed for swimming. They use them to paddle through the water while their back legs stay straight and act like a rudder, helping them steer. Since we visited polar bears, we might as well add a romantic fact about penguins here. Male Gentoo and Adelie penguins put themselves out there with proposals. They offer their potential mates precious pebbles, essential for building nests in the harsh Antarctic landscape. If the lady penguin accepts the pebble, they're in it for life, bonded and ready to mate. Another study has found that our adorable house cats share more than 95% of their genetic makeup with tigers. These little furballs also mimic many behaviors of their wild relatives, like marking territory with scents and the classic, stalking and pouncing during playtime. Biologically though, a cat's brain is kind of similar to a human's. We share identical emotional regions in our brains. Cats can also make up to 100 different sounds. Owls have eye tubes or cylinders. Their rod-shaped eyes don't do the eyeball moving. Our eyes can move in almost all directions. Owls have to make a full body or full head turn to look around, all because of night vision. To master the art of seeing in the dark, they need large corneas that can scoop up every bit of light. Most nighttime critters, like slow lorises or tarsiers, have enormous eyes to get the job done. But owls have small skulls on their agenda, so those big eyes couldn't swell out. Cockroaches are notorious for their survival skills, and a key reason is their unique brain structure. They have 2 brains, one in their head and a more basic one near their abdomen. They're so hard to get because these critters are incredibly quick to react. They have tiny hairs on their rear end that can feel the slightest breeze. When these hairs twitch, the cockroach doesn't waste time. It instantly switches to escape mode. Research shows that a cockroach can react in just 1/20th of a second. So by the time we turn on the light or grab something to target it, the cockroach is already speeding off. Cats can have dreams. Sometimes you can see your cat's whiskers twitching or its legs kicking while it's sleeping. This doesn't necessarily mean your pet is having a nightmare. We can look at human sleep to get a clue about what's happening with our feline friends. During REM sleep, our brains get super active, almost like when we're awake. That's also the prime time for dreaming. REM sleep is named this way because of the quick movements the eyes make under the eyelids. But while our eyes might be moving, the rest of our body stays still. The focus is on what's going on in our minds. This is true for cats too. Besides an occasional twitch, cats usually don't move much when they're asleep.
Some strange seismic activity begins all over the world. Volcanoes on the planet are waking up, but instead of lava, fiery stones, and black ash, they release an invisible gas that slowly fills the atmosphere. This gas is safe for all mammals and insects, but for some reason, it harms people. Gas masks, medication, nothing helps. It's like Earth says, "Hey people, I've had enough, get out of here." To survive, humanity decides to move to a place where the gas can't reach, underwater. We begin global migration to the seas and oceans. The first thing we need to do is build underwater cities. Engineers use anti-corrosive metals and building materials that are not destroyed by moisture, so there are no problems with the construction. But there are too many people on the planet, which means we need to move further and further from the shore, and the deeper the bottom, the stronger the pressure. To build an ordinary underwater house, It's necessary to create equipment capable of withstanding the water column. Also, it requires expensive materials. Stainless steel is not enough. There should be strong alloys of metals to resist colossal pressure. All of this takes a lot of time, and while some are building cities moving deeper foot by foot, others are crowding in coastal parts. Ponds and lakes are becoming the best places to live. First, it's much easier to swim in fresh water. People spend much less energy and time on movements there. Secondly, fresh water doesn't require powerful filtration used in seas and oceans. And thirdly, there are fewer people in ponds and lakes, which makes the water cleaner. Therefore, all the rich people live there, and the poor survive in the oceans. Famous auto brands create stylish submarines and closed boats with filtration systems. Scientists, together with engineers, come up with a technology that quickly extracts oxygen from water. One box with this technology constantly fills every house with fresh air. And another special box sucks all the carbon dioxide out of the room and releases it into the water. Clothing brands create stylish diving suits. The ocean is cold, so designers install a heating system inside clothing. People used to collect sneakers, but now they wear fashionable fins. There are thousands of fin designs with various engravings and patterns. People create underwater mills to generate electricity and build underwater vacuum pipes inside which high-speed trains drive. But the most remarkable thing is aquatic farms, where livestock eats grass and seeds. There are also incubators with plants that produce extra oxygen. The human body is also changing. The skin becomes smoother and the muscles get stronger. Life in the ocean is a continuous overcoming of water resistance. And you also need to carry an oxygen tank with you. So every day is like a good training in a gym. Take a look at the Olympic swimming champions. Now, most people have such a figure. Doctors, biologists, and engineers unite to create unique masks that allow people to breathe in the water like fish without oxygen tanks. People get much less sunlight underwater and lose vitamin D. This causes depression and weakens the immune system. To fix this problem, scientists build huge ultraviolet lamps that illuminate the entire seabed. People are getting used to a new life. In a sense, it's not much different from the previous one. Everyone also goes to cafes, cinemas, shopping, and the gym. People get an education, work, and use the same law system. Only now, instead of walking down the streets, they swim. Water resources are rich in oil, minerals, and other valuable things. This ensures the growth of the economy. Megacities have appeared in the deep waters of the oceans, and seas and lakes are becoming resorts. The conditions on the surface have become completely unsuitable for humans, and the next generations don't even know what it is like to live on land. Meanwhile, tracks of people on the surface disappear. Abandoned houses are overgrown with moss and vines. Animals fill cities. Seismic activity causes earthquakes that carry all buildings underground. Humanity made room for a new species, fish. Several 100 million years ago, the ocean was inhabited by giant monsters. The smaller fish couldn't fight these big guys, so they swam as close to the shore as possible. Then, over the years of evolution, they began to change. Fish grew limbs and learned to crawl on the ground. And so, after a couple 100 million years, they began to turn into mammals. And after that, people appeared. At least that's what the theory of evolution says. Approximately the same story happened with modern fish. Only instead of sea monsters, they faced people in the ocean. Bright light, oxygen consumption, emissions of harmful gases, and garbage forced the fish to migrate first into the depths of the oceans. And then, as humans began to master the depths, the fish swam to the surface. But not because there wasn't enough space in the ocean, but because people started catching too much fish. It's problematic to grow grains, fruits, and vegetables underwater, even in closed farms. Therefore, to replenish the food supply, people just started fishing. To survive, the marine inhabitants had to swim to the surface. Now fish grow limbs to crawl. But when the dangers of people are left behind, the fish face a new problem: mammals. The population of bears, tigers, wolves, and all animals has increased since people left the surface. Now the predators are the rulers of the continents. The hardest struggle for survival begins. Fish learn to disguise themselves to hide from enemies. Many grow venomous spines, while others gain the ability to strike hard with their fins. But octopuses evolve the least. These clever creatures are the first to grab sticks and stones to fend off bears. They learn to dig holes in the ground and pluck fruit from trees, and soon they become heads of the Sea Kingdom. Meanwhile, people are building powerful spaceships to find another planet to inhabit. There's too little space in the ocean, and the water is too dirty. Ventilation systems are pumping too much oxygen out of the ocean, releasing a lot of carbon dioxide. Seaweed and phytoplankton, which provide more than half of the world's oxygen reserves, are disappearing because of human activity. People understand they have to leave Earth. Gradual migration begins. Humanity has been evacuated from the planet on giant ships for several centuries. They're flying to an exoplanet, just a couple hundred light-years from Earth. Octopuses are becoming more intelligent than mammals. They see millions of giant ships flying out of the ocean and rising to the sky. The picture seems familiar to them. There's a memory of similar events somewhere in the depths of their DNA. The brain of octopuses develops faster thanks to the gas coming from the volcanoes. They become full-fledged masters of Earth. Animals and fish live next to them as pets. Then the octopuses build houses, invent the wheel, and open fire. From this moment, a new history of the planet begins, the era of octopuses. They create their civilization and find traces of the old one. Archaeologists with tentacles suggest that strange creatures lived on Earth once upon a time. They had 4 limbs and could walk upright. These creatures built their civilization here, but something happened, and these guys just disappeared. And while the octopuses are trying to figure out what happened to the previous civilization, people surf the expanses of space and meet a new, highly intelligent life. These humanoids look like octopuses since they have long tentacles, large eyes, and a developed brain. They tell people that once upon a time, they lived on planet Earth, but then plants and trees began to emit something called oxygen that poisoned the air. At first, the octopuses hid in the ocean, but oxygen filled the water, so they decided to leave the planet. Some of them adapted to the new conditions and stayed in the water with the fish. People tell them what happened next, including the history of humankind. The space octopuses realize that the story has now looped. Okay, let's face it, we humans are pretty ordinary. I mean, we're no superheroes with superpowers, right? What, you didn't get the memo? But the animal world has a bunch of superheroes. Some creatures live forever, and those who seem to not care about the laws of gravity. Critters that are immune to venom, and those that can run on water. And some of them will send shivers down your spine. So the first superpower on the list is the ability to live without water. Kangaroo rats can get by without water for years. They actually don't mind living without any water. Humans, on the other hand, can only survive 3 days without water. Humans 0, kangaroo rats 1. These little buddies live in extremely arid desert areas and have to get water from the seeds and plants they eat. And although it may sound a bit disturbing, kangaroo rats also know how to extract water from their urine before they set off on a bathroom trip. This way, they don't waste a single drop of precious moisture. Well, that would come in handy at sporting events. Now let me introduce you to the Peter Parker of the animal world. Yep, seems like Spider-Man is real, but not human. Meet a gecko lizard, or simply gecko. This critter has a marvelous ability to climb up all kinds of vertical surfaces and can even go for a walk on the ceiling. This gravity-defying feat is possible thanks to the lizard's unique foot pads covered with tiny hairs. They can cling to almost any kind of surface, no matter whether it's smooth, hard, rough, or soft. One more fun fact about these guys is that they lack eyelids, so they always keep an eye wide open for what's going on around them. If you wonder how they keep their eyes protected, here's the answer. Their eyes are covered with a transparent membrane, the cornea. Sure thing, they can't close their eyes, and if they have something in their eye, they simply lick it off. Right, they clean their eyeballs by licking them. I guess that's another superpower. Any supersonic superpowers here? Sure. A 1-inch long subtropical shrimp disorients its prey with a sonic boom. Despite its modest size, the pistol shrimp is one of the loudest marine animals. When the shrimp snaps its claws, it creates a sound as loud as a sonic boom. Naturally, this sound stuns the prey, and the shrimp can catch it without too much effort. Now, in the comic world, there's Venom. In the animal world, there's a guy that can be called anti-venom. Opossums are known for their handy trick of pretending to have passed away when a predator attacks them. But that's not the end of the story. These guys are also immune to rattlesnake and pit viper venom. The secret is a peptide that helps opossums neutralize dangerous chemicals. This is the reason why snakes are a favorite treat on opossums' diet. There's one curious thing they have on their diet: ticks. One opossum can hoover up about 5,000 ticks per season, and most of them are picked off their own bodies. Now, imagine a fish that is so notorious that it's called a dangerous fish. It's mabenga, and it literally translates to dangerous fish in Swahili. This monster lives in freshwater and doesn't mind having a crocodile for lunch. Not a whole crocodile, but mabenga can take a bite out of them. But to be honest, these guys are intimidated by the crocodiles, the same way the crocs are intimidated by them. Now, you're watching this video on some gadget, right? Well, we all owe the gadgets we have to the electric eels in some way. I mean, all gadgets have batteries, and eels contributed a lot to the invention of an electric battery back in 1800. I know, the batteries have unrecognizably changed since then, but still, the first electric battery ever was invented thanks to electric eels. Anyway, if you see one of them and want to thank them for their magnificent invention, don't do that. Thing is, they can deliver shocks up to 860 volts. You don't want to experience that. Now let's talk about the Count Dracula of the animal kingdom. Nope, I'm not talking about bats. I'm talking about the fanged vampire fish. These fish are known as payara and have 2 long fangs protruding from their lower jaw. Here's why some people associate them with vampires. Hippos are the beauty gurus, since they know how to save a fortune on skincare. Living under the harsh African sun, these animals secrete a sweat-like red oily substance that evaporates and keeps the animals' bodies cool. Besides, the fluid works as a moisturizer, sunscreen, and antibiotic all in one. But they're not the only ones with such a superpower. Mantis shrimp know how to produce natural sunscreen too, but they use it for eye protection. It's all about amino acid pigments, and these pigments act as special filters that contribute to their sharp vision too. That's what I call multitasking. Meerkats have dark patches around their eyes which makes them look even cuter. But these black circles aren't there just to make these buddies more adorable. They also function as built-in sunglasses. The dark fur on the patches blocks the blazing sun, and as a result, meerkats can gaze directly at the sky. On top of that, the sentry, a meerkat that watches out for birds and other predators, can easily see danger coming and alert its mates. Wild goats are famous for their climbing skills, but the alpine ibex from northern Italy is the champion. This critter can climb nearly any vertical surface, defying several physical laws in the process. Interestingly, the animals that do walk on the steepest cliff walls are typically mother goats with their little ones. Large males prefer to keep their distance and use flat horizontal surfaces. Smart guys. Some animals protect themselves with venom or nasty bites, while others use chemical tricks for protection. Listen to this. Some species of millipedes produce hydrogen cyanide and exude it when they feel threatened. Hydrogen cyanide is odorless but highly toxic. One little millipede can't seriously hurt you, but you may have burns or even blisters if your skin is sensitive. Plus, to make the picture even scarier, some millipedes glow in the dark. So watch out, and if you see a crawling spot of light at night, run away as fast as you can. When the bombardier beetle feels threatened, it sprays scorching liquid from the tip of its abdomen with a loud popping sound. As soon as the beetle senses danger, a chemical reaction starts in special reservoirs in its abdomen. The heat from this process nearly reaches the boiling point and also produces special gas that triggers the ejection. This super protection is usually fatal for the attacking insects. I guess so. Plumed basilisk lizards have an uncanny ability to run on water. First of all, their hind feet are equipped with long toes which have fringes of skin that can spread out in the water. As a result, a bigger surface of the lizard's foot comes into contact with water. Then, when it runs on water, it pumps its legs incredibly fast. This creates little pockets of air that prevent the animal from drowning by keeping it on the surface. Now, fleas can be annoying, but it doesn't make them any less amazing. These tiny critters can leap about 50 times their body length. If people could do the same, we would be jumping about a quarter of a mile into the air. Well, let's try it. The most curious thing about fleas' astonishing ability is that they take most of the power for leaps from their toes, not knees. So, what's your favorite animal superpower? I vote for the kangaroo rat. I don't like standing in lines for the bathroom. Do you remember 2011? Well, play along with me. A diver is set to go deep into the waters of the Musi River, located in the heart of an Indonesian island. He is one among many who have been getting unbelievable artifacts from the bottom of the river. Little by little, divers and fishers discover a long-lost Sumatran civilization. Known as the Island of Gold, the kingdom of Srivijaya was most likely the closest to a real-life El Dorado there has ever been. However, it disappeared late in the 13th century, and until recently, researchers didn't even know the exact location of the kingdom. Picture a civilization built on a river, a true water world, according to the archaeologists that have been studying Srivijaya. Houses, markets, and places of worship were built on wooden piles above the level of the water. Citizens moved around like modern-day Venetians in simple boats. Srivijaya was known to be a rich and important kingdom. It existed from the 7th to the 11th century CE. It was part of the Silk Road, and anyone traveling from east to west had to pass through the city. Their kings were smart and gained control of the Malacca Strait, which allowed the town to have total control over trading routes in the region. If anything, they sure were honoring the town's name. Srivijaya translates from Sanskrit into prosperous victor, or simply glorious. The kingdom was an important commercial outpost of ancient times. It was strategically located among the most influential commercial routes of the ancient world, which means its citizens became extremely rich. Ancient wealthy societies used to overly display their gold and precious metals. They would often use these metals as offerings to their deities, or they would use them to forge large statues and to make jewelry for kings and queens and decorations for their palaces. Srivijaya wasn't different. Local Indonesian divers who have been exploring the half-mile of the Musi River near the city of Palembang have found some evidence. So far, they've discovered a life-size statue of Buddha, jewelry studded with precious gems, temple bells, mirrors, golden jugs, and other items. No official archaeological excavations have been done in the area, so these artifacts are the first items of the Srivijayan Empire ever found. Sean Kinsley, a British maritime archaeologist who has reported on these discoveries, says he is truly surprised. For long, people have been speculating about the true wealth of Srivijaya, and it seems that the rumors have been confirmed. We're starting from ground zero, he says. We don't know what clothes the people of Srivijaya wore, what their tastes were, what kinds of ceramics they like to eat off. Even though this discovery has brought excitement to the scientific community, there is a downside. Divers and fishers sell the retrieved artifacts at the International Antiquities Market before archaeologists can take a look at them. Researchers could try to buy some items, but they're sold for millions of dollars worldwide. Most of the information we know about this El Dorado of the East was learned from merchant accounts of the city. These descriptions say Srivijaya was a kingdom of human-eating snakes and multilingual parrots. That's weird. Some say its active volcanoes gave the town an eerie and enigmatic sight, and all stories emphasize the amount of gold available there. Travel reports were a common way to describe cities in ancient times. In case you didn't know, this is how the legend of El Dorado originally began. As European explorers began their excavations in South American lands back in the 1500s, the word got out that an Amazonian civilization used to paint their leader in gold as an offering to higher powers. The legend of El Hombre Dorado, also known as the Golden Man, began to quickly spread around Europe. It turned out that it was only a ceremonial piece of pre-Columbian civilization. It had nothing to do with the land of infinite gold. Now, no one knows what brought about the decline of the Srivijaya Empire. Some speculate that its active volcanoes could have swallowed it, or maybe wooden houses built above the river eventually sank. Maybe if divers keep retrieving lost items from the bottom of the river, archaeologists will be able to figure out what happened to the city. It seems to be quite common in the history of the world. Some ancient civilizations disappeared without a trace, as happened with the Mayan civilization, for example. The Mayans managed to build one of the biggest empires in pre-Columbian America. It was believed to be home to over 2 million people, and it thrived for over 6 centuries. Its sudden demise is something that bothers archaeologists and scientists alike. The Mayans began to settle in South America as early as 1500 BCE. Their civilization spanned Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, Guatemala, and Belize. They are believed to have built around 40 cities at the height of their empire. They also developed a complex hieroglyph system that has been studied since it was discovered by modern scientists. The Mayans were keen engineers, astronomers, and farmers. They were post-nomadic people that settled in vast areas of farmland where they could grow corn and other types of vegetables. Archaeologists are still learning a lot about the Mayan civilization by examining their ruins. The city of Chichen Itza, located in the Yucatan Peninsula, is one of the most important Mayan sites unearthed today. The site is made up of a total of 26 ruins, and it is home to a world-famous pyramid known as El Castillo. It consists of a series of square terraces with stairways on each of the 4 sides of the temple. It was built as an homage to a feathered serpent deity. The Mayans were such architectural geniuses that they managed to build a pyramid that cast a particular shadow. More specifically, in the late afternoon during the spring and fall equinoxes, the pyramid casts several triangular shadows that create the illusion of a feathered serpent crawling down the pyramid. And they created this with none of the tech we have today. The city is so amazing that since 2007, it has been considered one of the 7 wonders of the New World. The Mayan Empire thrived for over 6 centuries due to their wise resource management system and astronomical knowledge. They were able to accurately predict eclipses, and using their rudimentary technology, could even locate Venus and Mars. They had everything to thrive for much longer than they actually did. This is why the Mayans' fall intrigues modern scientists so much. No one has been able to understand completely what led to their demise. That is, until a recent discovery. A study done by NASA claims it can explain what might have happened. Scientists have uncovered a sample of pollen trapped for over 1,200 years in ancient layers of lake sediment, which dates back to the time just before the collapse of the civilization. The analysis has revealed something completely new about the Mayans. Instead of the suspected claims that the Mayans disappeared due to terrible disease or some extended conflict in the region, it could have happened due to deforestation. Perhaps to build their entire empire, they had to cut a lot of trees. Without trees, their soil could have eroded, and all their fertile lands could have slowly and gradually become barren. According to NASA scientists, the temperatures in the region could have risen by about 6 degrees, and from that point on, the land would have become even drier and crops more difficult to grow. Basically, NASA says that the Mayans couldn't do the sole thing that made them thrive, which was agriculture, and their kingdom began to decline. Oh yeah, and this theory was supported by yet another find. Archaeologists found skeletons from the time of the empire. Those had prominent signs of malnutrition. This theory might really shed new light on Mayan history. It could explain what brought down such a powerful civilization. So, what do you say? Which theory is true? have we actually managed to find out the reason for the fall of the Mayan Empire?
Yo ho ho, a pirate's life for me! Let me stop you right there. If you think being a pirate or a sailor back in the old days was so cool, here's the harsh truth. It was not all about singing sea shanties and embarking on epic voyages across the 7 seas to find the Fountain of Youth or caves filled with gold. It wasn't actually that cool being at sea all the time, and I have 5 compelling reasons to prove you so. Let's dive in, pun intended. Now imagine this. You're so excited. You've been waiting for this day to come, and finally, it's official. You're going to become a real sailor. The captain tells you to get ready because the next day, you're going to set sail on a journey that is expected to take somewhere around 6 months, if you're lucky that is, because storms and singing mermaids could complicate things. You pack a few things. Now, let's pause this daydream for a quick second because here comes problem number 1. What I mean by packing a few things is just the clothes on your back. Sailors would only have one set of clothes that they almost never washed during the entire voyage. That's because they believed that dirt and grease would protect them from winds and rains. Okay, back to the thought experiment. You kiss your family goodbye and head to the port where your new home is waiting. One of your crew members not so warmly welcomes you on the deck and shows you where you'll be sleeping. This makes you start doubting your choice of becoming a sailor in the first place. Because after seeing it, you're certain that this is not going to be a 5-star hotel comfort level kind of experience. So, here's problem number 2. The ships were absolutely crammed. Back in the day, sailors would have to accept living in such conditions, whether they were working for a big name like Christopher Columbus or not. The Nina and the Pinta were 2 of Columbus's ships and the best sailing vessels of their time. Yet again, this didn't change the fact that they were so small that men had no place to sleep. Which gives us problem number 3. Having to sleep next to one another on a crowded deck where they could barely move was not so great for sailors' health conditions, and going below deck to escape the snoring of their fellow shipmates was not an option because there was no fresh air there. In addition, you could always come across a rat there. So, kiss personal hygiene goodbye. And in case you're wondering how rats got there, those little rascals are actually good swimmers. Also, sailors were at sea no matter the season or the weather, so they were often cold and wet, which also made it hard for them to stay healthy and strong. Speaking of health conditions brings us to problem number 4, and it's food and hunger. Sailors didn't have their own mini fridges with different kinds of condiments back then, like the compartments luxury cruises have these days. So, they had to come up with ways to store enough food that would last for months or even years. Due to that, their food options were limited. It definitely wasn't like the food prepared by Michelin star chefs. One of the most common food options on ships was salted meat, which wasn't as chewy as you might imagine. Or a biscuit called hardtack, also called sheet iron or worm castles. And there's a reason for all these creative nicknames. Hardtack was essentially a mix of water and flour baked into a cardboard-flavored cracker. They were brick-like, and the only way they could be eaten was if they were softened with water. If only sailors could dip them in their afternoon tea, right? Sometimes these biscuits would still be extremely dense. Then sailors would have to slam their fists down on them to break them into smaller pieces to be able to eat the stuff. As long as hardtack was kept dry, it rarely got spoiled. The sailors would be able to eat them after a year if they had any left. But most of the time, it would be extremely hard to keep them dry inside wooden casks. And then, they would get infested with bugs that would leave small holes behind. However, sailors would still eat them anyway. Have to take protein from somewhere. By now, you might have figured out that there were no fruits or vegetables in a sailor's diet. This caused vitamin deficiency in many sailors. So those toothless pirates and sailors in the movies you see? Yep, it's all because of poor nutrition. And the iron-hard crackers probably didn't help either. But when sailors ran out of food, not having a balanced diet was probably the least of their concerns. Back in the old times, a voyage could take way longer than expected due to weather conditions. there could be no winds to push the ship further. Or a powerful storm could shake the ship and the waves and water could destroy the food storage. So when such a situation happened, sailors could easily run out of food. Well, they could throw the net into the ocean and catch some fish, right? But sailors didn't eat fish even in the face of starvation. Many captains mentioned this in their logbooks, which were basically captains' diaries. The problem was not that sailors couldn't get fish. In fact, many different kinds of fish were caught in their nets, but they had to throw them all back into the sea. During the exploration era, Antonio Pigafetta mentioned in his logbook that the ship's crew caught an unbelievable amount of fish, but they didn't eat any of them. Also, in the same journal, he mentioned that 40 of the sailors lost their lives. Naturally, sailors thought that only poisonous fish were dangerous. And because of that, they were inclined to eat only the fish they knew. But even a well-cooked tuna could be poisonous, and they had to learn it the hard way. But it's not like they didn't have any methods to check fish. Spanish sailors, for example, put silver coins on them. If the silver changed color, they considered those fish to be poisonous, therefore inedible. So they would toss them overboard. Other sailors would place the fish they caught on the deck and observe if flies or other insects came to feast on it. If they didn't land on the fish, this meant that it was poisonous. But if insects did come, they considered it safe to eat. The problem of eating fish caught in the open sea dates back to as early as the 7th century BCE. Imperial healers in ancient China knew that eating fish was the reason why some sailors lost their lives. But they couldn't prove that the fish were poisonous, and the mystery remained unsolved up until the 19th century. In 1886, a Cuban doctor finally figured out that some fish contained poison in their tissues and muscles, even though they were considered a safe-to-eat breed. That kind of poison is actually something that is found in plankton. Some fish can eat this plankton without being affected. They store it in their bodies. And as they grow, the rate of the poison increases within them. And this is something that doesn't go away no matter how long one cooks the fish. If you still think that life at sea back in the old days sounds exciting, this 5th problem will convince you otherwise. Let's say you've managed to get along with your roommates, stay clean and healthy, and eat regularly. But there's always a risk of getting caught by pirates, and they didn't ask for things kindly. So, if you didn't want to end up as food for sharks, you would have to raise the white flag and simply join them. Not the career you were planning, right? Good luck scrubbing the deck for the rest of your life.
A black cat crossing the road, bananas on board a ship, a horseshoe hanging over the door, and other superstitions seem meaningless, but many people still believe in them. All these things make sense if you find out their origin. Let's look at 11 most famous superstitions. A football match, a business project presentation, or a tricky exam is coming. You're afraid of failing and therefore knock on wood. People in Europe and the US have been preserving this ritual for over 2,000 years to avoid trouble. Knocking on wood to prevent disappointment could originate among peasants who knocked on tree trunks to scare away evil spirits who wanted to spoil people's lives. Some people are afraid to walk under a leaning ladder. And if you ask them what the reason for such fear is, they probably won't be able to answer you. The superstition that passing under a ladder can lead to failure appeared about 5,000 years ago in ancient Egypt. The pyramids were triangular because the Egyptians considered this form sacred. A leaning ladder also has a triangle shape, so walking under it felt like a desecration of a sacred symbol. In other cultures, such a ladder meant evil, misfortune, and betrayal. And in the 17th century, in England, guards forced prisoners to pass under ladders. One of the most famous bad signs is a broken mirror. To see yourself in its shards means failure for the next 7 years. Even visually, the reflection in broken glass seems ominous. So many people are afraid to look there. But historically, this fear originated in ancient Greece, where many people came to special mystics who knew how to predict the future using a mirror image. If someone's reflection was distorted, then trouble awaited this person. A broken or cracked mirror also distorted the image. so people were afraid to look there. Then, in the 1st century CE, the Romans added the detail about 7 years of misfortune to the superstition. The inhabitants of the empire believed that human health changed every 7 years, so looking at a distorted reflection meant precisely this period. And the Romans also believed that mirrors reflected particles of our souls. So if you broke a mirror, it meant you were hurting your soul. Spilled salt? Throw a pinch of it over your shoulder right away if you don't want trouble. Why can salt bring trouble and at the same time help avoid it? The answer lies partly in the name. The words salt and salary are similar because both of these things are valuable. In the past, salt was an expensive product. Spilling it on the floor meant throwing money away. Over 3,000 years ago, the ancient Sumerians were the first to throw salt over their shoulders to cancel misfortune. Then, the tradition passed to the Egyptians, Assyrians, and Greeks. In Europe, it was believed that when you threw a pinch of salt over your left shoulder, you blinded an evil spirit who wanted to cause you trouble. Now, salt doesn't seem valuable, so only a few people believe in this superstition. Sailors in the past were in a dangerous position when they went out to sea. No wonder they began to believe in all sorts of superstitions. And one of the most popular ones was related to bananas. Keeping the yellow fruit on board was believed to cause serious problems at sea. This superstition appeared in the 18th century when merchant ships leaving the Caribbean and Spain began to disappear. People who found shipwrecks said that bananas had been floating among the wooden planks. Thus, these fruits became messengers of disaster. Storms, pirates, sea monsters, anything could happen to a ship if bananas were on board. Some anglers are sure that bananas can spoil fishing, and this superstition has a scientific basis. Bananas emit a special gas that may be unpleasant to fish. Perhaps marine life can sense bananas from afar and doesn't want to swim close to them. These days, many sailors believe in the negative energy coming from bananas too. So don't be surprised if you won't be allowed on the boat with this fruit in your hand. Have you ever noticed a horseshoe hanging on the front door of some houses? Of course, many people hang it as a decoration and don't attach importance to its meaning. However, since ancient times, it has been considered an effective talisman for scaring away bad spirits. Also, the horseshoe was a symbol of good luck in many cultures. All these beliefs first appeared in ancient Greece, where iron was considered a material that protected from evil. Also, the Greeks made horseshoes in the crescent moon form because it symbolized fertility and good luck. Then, this belief passed to the Romans, and after that, to Europe. People feared witches, sorcerers, and other mythical creatures in the Middle Ages, so they hung horseshoes in every house. They were sure that witches were afraid of horses, so they would avoid any objects related to these animals. If you want to avoid problems, don't open your umbrella indoors. This is one of the few superstitions that have practical significance. For the first time, people started talking about it in Victorian England. At that time, umbrellas were tougher and more dangerous than now. Iron spokes could injure someone or break something. All these troubles could also provoke quarrels with the people you lived with, so no one opened umbrellas inside. A black cat running across the road is one of the most famous superstitions. Some believe this is an omen of good luck. Others believe that it promises misfortune. The two versions have two different sources. In ancient Egypt, cats were sacred animals, and people revered them. Therefore, it was lucky for an Egyptian to see a black cat crossing their path. In the Middle Ages, these animals frightened people because they believed the black cat was witches' companion and a talisman of dark forces. If a black cat crossed the road, it meant that evil was watching you. When the Pilgrims settled in the New World, this superstition began to spread throughout America, and many people still believe in it. Another animal mentioned in many superstitions is the magpie. This bird is known for stealing jewelry items and coins, so people consider it a harbinger of failure. People say when they see it, "Good morning, Mr. Magpie. How's your lady wife today?" Many believe these words banish failures from them. A magpie chooses one partner for life. So if you see a magpie without a mate, it means it's very lonely. Mentioning its partner may sadden the bird, and it won't play dirty tricks on you. The fear associated with the number 13 is so prevalent worldwide that it even got its own name, triskaidekaphobia. In the modern world, people fear this number because of pop culture. Movies, books, and TV shows say this number is associated with evil, troubles, and dangers. Still, no statistics can prove that 13 is an unlucky number. There have been no accidents related to the number 13. People born on the 13th day feel great and have no health problems. But then, where did we get this fear from? The origins of triskaidekaphobia refer us to Scandinavian mythology. There's one legend about Valhalla where 12 guests were invited to a great feast in Asgard: Odin, Thor, and other famous characters. But then Loki burst into the hall uninvited and became the 13th guest who ruined the party. So 13 became a number that can ruin your life. Why is finding a four-leaf clover considered a harbinger of good luck? The probability of finding this plant is 1 in 10,000, and you must be lucky to find it. But beyond that, the four-leaf clover has an interesting legend about its origin. It says Eve took a four-leaf clover to remember the Garden of Eden when she was expelled from paradise. Thus, the plant has become a symbol of prosperity, good luck, and happiness.
Well, this happened in June 2009. People in certain areas in Japan left their homes after a heavy downpour, only to find fish, frogs, and tadpoles everywhere. Fields, roads, lawns, rooftops were littered with these aquatic creatures. One man was shocked to see 13 carp on and around his truck. Apparently, he stopped to count them. No one knows for sure where the bizarre rain came from, but the most popular theory claims that a powerful waterspout picked up all these creatures. Then it carried them through the upper atmosphere and dropped the animals on the unsuspecting people below. Shelf clouds look like something from a sci-fi movie. They form when warm and moist air gets caught in a thunderstorm updraft. These ominous clouds most often mean a storm is coming. Breathtaking rainbow clouds appear on top of cotton-like puffy clouds after thunderstorms. The puffy clouds are low-altitude ones. They usually hover at a height of around 6,000 feet. When the water vapor they contain condenses, the resulting droplets act like prisms. This forms multicolored caps over the clouds. Morning glory clouds are extremely rare. They look like massive tubes stretching across the sky. They can snake for more than 600 miles, sitting relatively low. Most researchers agree that these clouds appear when an updraft squeezes through the cloud. This creates the signature rolling appearance. The cool air at the back of the cloud makes it sink downward. The best, but not the only place to see morning glory, is Australia's Gulf of Carpentaria. If you decide to travel there to see these clouds, choose a period from late September to early November. It was 2012 when the sky turned first ominous dark, then yellow. After that, blue gelatinous balls started to fall to the ground. A man from the UK found these balls outside during a hailstorm. He was walking to his garage when he spotted something unusually bright among the whitish hailstones. When researchers examined this jelly rain, they found out the balls were made from the substance used in diapers or potting soil. It's used to absorb liquid. It's still unclear whether the balls fell from the sky, or maybe the melting ice made a few already existing crystals expand in the blink of an eye. Huge white lumps over your head are called Mamus Clouds. They can make you believe the sky is falling. Most clouds form when the air rises into the atmosphere, but not Mamus ones. They appear when moist and cool air goes down and mixes with dry air. The result? Unique puffed rice clouds. By the way, if you spot this phenomenon, bad weather is just around the corner. Whoa, mama! Colorful nacreous clouds occur extremely high in the atmosphere. I mean, twice as high as a commercial airplane's cruising altitude. The air at such heights is extremely dry and cold. Ice crystals in nacreous clouds are much smaller than those that form more common clouds. They scatter light in a different way, and this gives the clouds their mother-of-pearl appearance. Blood rain looks more terrifying than any horror movie. But in reality, there's nothing strange or unnatural about this weather phenomenon. People have known about such scarlet-tinted rains since the time of ancient Rome. Sometimes powerful winds lift red dust into the atmosphere and carry it far, far away to another galaxy. In the end, this dust gets mixed with clouds, which colors the rain. By the way, dust from coal mines can make the rain black. Pollen is responsible for yellow rains, and some other kinds of dust can turn the rainwater white. In Australia, it sometimes rains spiders. That's because these creatures can balloon. That's a highly unusual way of traveling. A spider climbs to the very top of a tall tree or shrub, and then it spins several strands of silk. These strands help the spider to be carried away by the wind. It's not easy to spot ballooning, but sometimes, if the weather is especially damp and unpleasant, mass ballooning happens, and then you can't help but pay attention. Millions of spiders set off on a journey to find another place with better conditions. It may seem like it's snowing outside, but no, those are spiders drifting down to the ground. Ever see huge round disks in the sky? Most likely, those were lenticular clouds. They usually form over large and high places like mountains or hills. When strong winds bump into some barrier, this creates an air wave. The air kind of wraps around the obstacle, and the higher the barrier is, the colder the air that's rising over it becomes. At some point, the moisture it contains turns into water droplets, and they form the unusual clouds. Lenticular clouds can look like waves, a pizza, or even a stack of pancakes. How yummy! Volcanic tornadoes are possibly one of the most terrifying natural phenomena. When a volcano erupts, it spews red-hot rock and ash high into the air. As for solid lava pieces and hot gases, they travel down the volcano slope. When this flow moves down, some of the trapped gases begin to rise and spin at the same time. They get squeezed by the surrounding air, which makes them spin faster and faster. That's how a volcanic tornado gets born. Luckily, this phenomenon has a very short lifespan. On March 19, 2018, the inhabitants of Alabama had to run for their lives. Otherwise, they would have been hit by huge chunks of ice falling from the sky. It was the infamous hailstorm that caused millions of dollars worth of damage. After the hailstorm, the area looked gloomy. Broken shop windows, smashed car windshields, busted billboards, holes in the roofs. At least, researchers got excited when they found a hailstone near the town of Cullman. This softball-sized monster was more than 5 inches across. No wonder it set a new state record. Cylindrical snow donuts occur when a wind gust decides to make a snowball. It starts to roll some snow across a snowy area. If it were a real snowball, it would eventually become too heavy for the wind to move. But the snow donut's center is hollowed out. This happens because its inner layer is too thin and is blown away when the donut is formed. This makes it lighter than a snowball, and that's why it also rolls farther. Unfortunately, you just can't go and find snow donuts. They're rare because they need very precise conditions to appear. Moonbows are a much rarer phenomenon than rainbows. They're caused by moonlight rather than direct sunlight and occur only when the moon is near full. Moonbows are dim and often seem to be white, but it's just an illusion. The human eye is just not sensitive enough to catch all the colors. Lightning balls are small, floating spheres of light. They can be orange, yellow, or even red. Sometimes lightning balls descend from the sky. In other cases, they appear out of nowhere, hovering several feet above the ground. They don't emit any heat or produce very little sound. Lightning balls can bounce off objects. If they come across something electrical, like a TV, they usually disappear with a quiet pop, leaving behind the smell of sulfur. But lightning balls can also start fires or explode. Scientists believe lightning balls might be connected with thunderstorms, but there's no solid proof yet. Fog bows are almost white, pale blue on the inside, and faint red on the outside. You have higher chances of seeing a fog bow over the cold sea or ocean when warm air comes into contact with much colder air. This phenomenon also occurs when the sun is bright and the fog is thin enough for the light to get through. Pele's hair is thin lava threads. They look golden and pretty, but don't even think about picking them up. Yeah, they can harm you. The wind sometimes catches small droplets of lava coming from active volcanoes. These droplets get carried miles away from the vent. They get stretched into super thin glass wires, also called hair lava. Some strands can be as long as 6 feet. In March 2018, those who looked up in the sky in northern Nevada saw one of the rarest and most bizarre clouds ever. It was a horseshoe cloud. Such a vortex happens when a flat cloud travels over a column of warm, rising air. This air not only gives the cloud its impressive shape, but also adds some spin to its movement. But you've got to be quick. Horseshoe clouds are very fleeting and usually last for only several minutes. Frost flowers bloom on young sea ice in the Arctic Ocean or on thin lake ice. They're fragile and delicate ice crystals. These structures grow during temperature changes. They draw moisture from the ice surface and rise, capturing bacteria and salt. You can find frost flowers in Antarctica too, but wherever these crystals grow, people know disappointingly very little about them. Still, they're awfully pretty. Welcome to another fight of the century. The first participant enters the ring. It's the Megalodon. This shark lived 23 to 3 million years ago, and right now it holds the title of the ultimate hunter of all times. The second fighter is in the ring, and it's the Dunkleosteus. It lived around 350 to 380 million years ago and was the largest fish of that time. These creatures swam all over the world and aroused fear with their armored heads and mighty jaws. We're going to compare our fighters in several categories. In each of them, the winner will get 1 point. In the final round, these two sea monsters will face each other for the last time, and we'll find out who the real king of the sea world is. Grab your popcorn and hot dogs, it's time for round 1. Size. These days, the largest white sharks grow to be 20 feet long. The Megalodon was more than twice that size, up to 50 feet. That's almost as long as a tennis court. The ancient shark's single fin was larger than the average person. The shark's jaws were more than 6 feet wide. It would mean you could comfortably sprawl out inside the creature's mouth. At the same time, you wouldn't want to get anywhere near a shark the size of a big truck, and the Meg might have been even bigger. The only remains of the ancient shark are its teeth and vertebrae. That's why scientists can only guess what its true size was. Now to the next fighter. Some species of Dunkleosteus were only 3 feet long, but the largest ones could reach almost 29 feet. This school bus-sized fish was one of the largest of its time and much bigger than many modern sharks. But the Megalodon is almost twice its size. So in this round, the Meg gets its first point and opens the score 1-0. Moving on to the next category, and that's weight. Wait, what are we waiting for? Oh, you mean weight. The largest white shark can weigh as much as a small car. In this case, the Meg might be compared to 2 loaded cement trucks, 60 tons. An empty Boeing 737 weighs less than the ancient super shark did. If you wanted to lift the Meg in the air, it would take as many as 3 CH-54 cargo helicopters. The heaviest part of the Dunkleosteus was its head because of its massive bones, and its length could be more than 1 foot. The ancient fish weighed almost as much as an adult elephant. It was also 4 times heavier than most modern sharks, with a total weight of 4 tons. And still, the Megalodon is more than 10 times heavier than the Dunkleosteus. Another clear victory in this round, 2-0. The next category is agility. How about a treadmill test for the Meg? Its top speed was 11 miles per hour. It seems rather low, but no wonder. It was hard for the shark to move its body, huge and bulky. For comparison, much smaller modern white sharks can travel at 34 miles per hour. The fastest human can swim at almost 5 miles per hour, which means people wouldn't be able to escape from the Megalodon in the water. But the ancient shark had trouble turning. Its mobility could be compared to a large cargo plane in the sky. The Dunkleosteus, with all that heavy armor on its head, had perfect protection from all kinds of enemies. That's why it didn't need to be a good swimmer to get away from danger. Besides, it was the biggest fish in the ocean, meaning it had nothing to be afraid of. Still, the creature was smaller than the Meg. Its relatively compact size, plus agile lower fins and strong tail, made the Dunkleosteus speedier than the ancient shark. So, in this round, Dun gets its first point. The score is 2-1 in favor of the Megalodon. Let's move on. Now we'll see what our participants can use to fight each other. Round 4. Fighting Tools. The Meg's teeth were almost as long as your forearm, some of the largest teeth that ever existed. They were triangular in shape and razor sharp to pierce through whales' thick skin. The shark had 5 rows of teeth with around 50 teeth in each row, 250 in total. Do the math! The Meg also had its teeth changed throughout its life. Researchers still find the ancient shark's teeth at the bottom of the ocean. The Dunkleosteus had no teeth whatsoever. Its jaws were formed from long bony plates. They were incredibly sharp and shaped into long slicing edges. The coolest thing was that these edges could self-sharpen. The fish's jaw muscles were incredibly strong. They allowed the creature to open its mouth in 20 milliseconds. Time it. With a jaw like that, Dun had one of the most powerful bites on Earth. Its strength can be compared to that of the Mississippian alligator. For its surprisingly hefty bite, Dunkleosteus gets another point. The score becomes tied at 2-2. Now, let's see which of our contestants is more popular. The Meg is the most famous shark in the world. It's appeared not only in many movies and comics, but also in fisher stories all over this planet. Every time someone saw a large shadow lurking near their boat, they were afraid they'd see the biggest shark on Earth. Some people think that megalodons are still alive. They're simply hiding somewhere deep under the surface, for example in the Mariana Trench. But to feed such a large body, the shark would have to eat constantly, like me. And if this myth was true, you'd definitely see a megalodon close to the surface one day. But it's never happened, so you can sleep easy. Even though the Dunkleosteus isn't that well known, it still deserves respect. It lived earlier than the first dinosaurs and was the largest predator of its time. When archaeologists first found the remains of the Dunkleosteus, they were shocked. They called the creature the terrible fish and only gave it a scientific name years later. Well, even though this round doesn't change the count, the Megalodon gets its People's Choice Award. And now, the final stage, Fighting Skills. The Megalodon has the title of one of the best hunters ever. Scientists have been able to figure out the ancient shark's hunting tactics. They learned that these creatures somehow knew where their opponent's vulnerable spots were. They hit vital organs and were quick to disable their enemies. Sometimes these ancient sharks would also aim at the fins of larger sea creatures to immobilize them. It left the bigger opponents defenseless and unprotected. Another tactic the Meg used was a battering ram approach. The massive shark would crash into a whale, leaving it with no chance to escape. In other words, intellect and strategy were the Megalodon's most important skills. At that time, the Meg was the largest shark in the world. But in the oceans, there were creatures much larger than that. For example, whales. And the Meg didn't always have the courage to charge them. As for the Dunkleosteus, its trump card was its powerful jaws. Usually the fish would swim toward a smaller animal. Then, in a split second, it would open its huge mouth, and the future meal would be pulled inside along with water. As the creature matured, its jaw shape changed. That's why, after being born, it could feed only on large, soft fish. But as it aged, it got the ability to bite through tougher stuff. And later in life, the Dunkleosteus began to munch on sea creatures with hard shells, or basically any sea animal that existed at that time. Anyway, it's up to you to decide who gets the point this time. Do you hear the sound of the gong? It means it's time for our sea monsters to meet face to face. They run into each other in the vast waters of the ocean. The Megalodon is the first to notice its opponent. The shark wants to use its battering ram approach against the Dunkleosteus's powerful armor, so it begins to speed up. But Dun dodges and avoids the collision. As the Meg turns around, the Dunkleosteus gets a chance to grab the shark by the tail. In a split second, its powerful jaws close on the shark's fin. But the fish's bony plates are too short to bite through the Meg's thick skin. The Megalodon begins to twist and wag its powerful tail to throw the Dunkleosteus off its body. It looks like a rodeo. Dun gets a powerful slap and is left stunned for a moment. The Megalodon uses this time to turn around. A couple of seconds later, the massive shark opens its huge jaw and ends the fight with one bite. So today, the Megalodon proves once again that it's worthy of its title as the best hunter of the SeaWorld. The ancient shark continues its wanderings in search of a stronger opponent. Stay tuned. And now, for some risky restaurant business. Pufferfish is a Japanese delicacy and something akin to Russian roulette in the world of food. Its highly poisonous flesh contains tetrodotoxin, which is 1,200 times more toxic than cyanide. Yum! Normally, people can't stay alive if they eat this fish, yet Japanese chefs are trained to remove the poisonous parts for the $200 delicacy named fugu. That's pricey. It's almost completely banned in the US. There are only a few authorized places that sell it. Can I say people are dying to get it? I can't? Okay, so I won't. Another food banned in the US is kazumarzu, which is rotten cheese in Italian. If you ever feel like trying it, head to Sardinia, Italy. Basically, it's some sheep milk cheese. Special flies are allowed to leave eggs in it that are left in the cheese for 40 days. This delicacy has some live maggots that take care of decomposing the cheese, giving it that distinctive texture and spicy flavor. It's banned in the US for sanitary reasons. You think? Unlike soft and creamy kazumarzu, Kirpi is known to be the world's hardest cheese. Just like any regular cheese, it's made from milk. Its main difference is that it stays fresh for up to 20 years. The milk is quite special too. The cows, which are actually a cross between cows and yaks, eat a variety of mountain herbs. Cheese made from this savory milk has unique flavor. National Jamaican fruit ackee has a unique taste. It's quite mild, its texture is buttery and creamy, and it tastes just like scrambled eggs. It's safe to eat ackee only as long as it's fully ripe. Beware though, the only edible part is the white creamy flesh itself. Toxic pink flesh and black seeds are a total One of the traditional Jamaican dishes with this fruit is called ackee and saltfish. Well, at least it's codfish, not pufferfish. Another thing that should be 100% ripe in order to be safe is elderberry. These berries are quite famous though. You can find them in pies, syrups, teas, jams, you name it. Process these berries properly though, since they contain cyanide. Fully ripe and cooked berries aren't dangerous. That's good to know. Actually, almost all the pits and stones contain cyanide. Your favorite cherries have it too. The amount is small and isn't likely to cause any harm, but still, try not to swallow them. Same with peaches, plums, and apricots. Just don't chew on them for too long. Now, if you're a fan of seafood, you probably want to try some sanakchi. It's some seasoned baby octopus tentacles. Well, the problem is that these are still alive. Those who have never tried this Korean dish claim the tentacles can still move on the plate and can stick to the inner part of your mouth since the suction function is maintained. Suction function. Meanwhile, another fun food fact. Greenland sharks don't have any urinary tract, and all the waste they produced is basically filtered through flesh and skin, so their flesh is toxic. Sounds like a good reason not to eat them, but not in Iceland. Nope. Hockerel, which is processed shark meat, is first hung to dry for 3 to 5 months. In the end, you get something like ammonia-smelling fermented fish with a jelly texture that reminds of wet bread. Cassava is a poisonous tropical root of 2 types. The sweet variation does contain some cyanide, but it's enough to cook it to reduce the toxic content to a safe level. To get rid of all the toxins in bitter cassava, it's necessary to grate the root, then soak it, and finally cook properly to make it edible. This root is very starchy and its flavor is really subtle. Cassava can be used just like potatoes, mashed, boiled, or fried. And I'd like a side of cassava, please, and hold the cyanide. Rhubarb doesn't seem to fit in this list of notorious dishes, but it actually has its downsides. Its leaves are super toxic, containing oxalic acid, and should never ever be used for cooking, baking, or whatever you want to do. If you ever try to eat one, the least serious consequences are a burning sensation all over the mouth, nausea, and breathing problems. If you live in the States and you're under 47, chances are you've never tried haggis, since it was banned almost a half a century ago. This Scottish pudding is made of a full range of sheep's inner parts. We'll spare you the details. Plus some oatmeal, a lot of minced onions, suet, just don't ask, and some broth. It's quite crumbly and coarse, and it's also spicy. It's usually served with mashed potatoes or mashed turnip on the side. Well, at least it's not mashed cassava. Well, by the way, potatoes aren't that harmless either. It all depends on whether they're ripe or not. So-called green potatoes are full of toxins, and potato sprouts contain solanine, which is quite toxic. Same with green almonds and cashews that are full of cyanide if not ripe enough. Luckily, the nuts we get at the supermarkets are well processed, which means they're completely safe. There's one bistro in Bangkok where they've been cooking the same beef and noodle soup for 45 years. Literally, the same. It's been simmering for over 4 decades. The broth has never been thrown away. It's always kept overnight for the next day's soup. They never wash the pan to keep the unique flavor. There's a massive grease rim around that huge pan, formed as a result of 45 years non-stop simmering spillovers. Please, be my guest. Chinese century eggs aren't white and yellow. They're black and gray when you peel them, and the outside color is brownish-green. To cook this savory Chinese delicacy, all you need is some tea, quick lime, salt, wood ashes, and some water to mix it all together. Dip the raw eggs in this paste and roll them in rice husks so they won't stick to each other. Let it sit for 100 years. Nah, just kidding. 10 days are enough when it's hot. For colder weather, it may take up to 30 days. Hey, don't go, it gets better. Bird droppings seem no delicacy, but in Greenland, there's a local dish actually based on them. It's called urumit, says here, and is made of ptarmigan droppings. They collect them in winter, and when they're dry, and cook them together with some rancid sea oil and some sea meat. The droppings, cooked this way, taste somewhat like gorgonzola. Check please. Surprisingly, harmless tuna can be pretty dangerous. Big fish live a long life in the ocean. The problem is, the mercury level in oceans has significantly risen over the last several decades, and the fish absorb it into their flesh. If you eat a lot of tuna or any other big ocean fish, you risk mercury toxicity. It's not that you should stop eating it, just monitor the weekly consumption. As for tuna, their eyeballs are quite a popular delicacy in China and Japan. Tuna eyeballs need to be boiled before eating, thank goodness, and some seasoning is required too. If you nail it, you'll have a delicacy that tastes like squid and stares back at you. Hey, on the good side, it costs less than $1. Red kidney beans are actually somewhat poisonous too. You might have never noticed or even known that, but it's because we eat all of them well processed. Cooked and baked beans expose no danger, while the raw kidney beans have a toxic protein in them. In order to get rid of it, you gotta first soak them well, preferably overnight, and change the water before boiling. When they're soft, they're nothing but a great source of non-toxic proteins and other nutrients. In Cambodia, you can try a crunchy, crispy snack that tastes a bit like crab. It's deep-fried and seasoned. The main ingredient is a tarantula. Now, this doesn't quite sound like a lunch. Now, this soup, whose name I won't even try to pronounce, is definitely scrumptious. The taste is sharp yet delicate, and it tastes just like shrimps. Well, this traditional Laotian dish sounds really cool until you realize it's made of ant eggs. To give it a bit of sourness, they also tend to add a few tiny ants. In Mexico, you don't throw away corn kernels turned black because they're rotten. You keep them as a culinary specialty called, this name. Fungus all over the kernel gives it that earthy, woody smell. Getting hungry? Some dishes just need the decoration, especially cakes and pies. In England, there's a pie called stargazing. The name speaks for itself. The sardines, accompanied by potatoes and eggs, peek out of the pie crust and stare at the skies. Sometimes these are the tails that point at the skies, though. Tea mushroom is another weird thing they drink in East Europe together with sour milk-based drinks. It's basically some fermented black or green tea. It's made by adding a whole culture of bacteria — they're not consumed, they just ferment the drink — to sweeten tea, where sugar acts like yeast. Add juice, spice, or whatever you want to taste. Well, I've had about enough of this. Think I'm gonna barf. Bye for now. You're sitting in a soft chair at home and watching TV. Click another reality show. Click an action movie you've seen so many times. Click a nature documentary. Boring. Click, click, click. The remote stopped working. Great. You open the back lid to change the batteries, and a random thought occurs to you. How did they come up with these batteries, you think? With the help of the fish, a voice from the TV answers you. You look at the screen. The host of the wildlife show talks about electric eels, how they generate electricity, why they don't hurt themselves with it, and how they help to create batteries. Okay, they got your attention. Make yourself comfortable and enjoy. We fly to South America. Here our exciting adventure through the tropical jungle begins. We need to go along the Amazon and find a small pond or stream that branches from the river. This is where our shocking little heroes live. You pull a fishing rod out of your backpack and throw the line into the water. Very soon, the fish should take the bait. By the way, an electric eel is not an eel at all. It's a fish, and it's closer to the carp or catfish family. The line is wiggling. You pull the rod but realize you're not strong enough because an electric eel is a really big creature. Its length can exceed 8 feet. That's more than the average height of a professional basketball player. And it weighs about 44 pounds. Size isn't the only thing that's scary about it. The electric eel is able to shock you really bad. An electric eel can't breathe in water like fish do. It needs to come up to the surface and breathe the air above. Besides, they jump out of the water to attack predators. This is their way of protecting themselves. The eel's electric power can reach more than 600 volts. This burst of energy is enough to knock an adult horse off its feet. That's why you need fake bait to make the eel deplete all its energy. You were prepared for this and took a life-size inflatable alligator doll with you. You throw it close to the fish, the eel attacks it several times. Now you have time before the fish recharges itself. You put the eel in a glass tank filled with water and carefully study it. Previously, when people discovered this fish for the first time, they placed it in an aquarium and transported it around the world. In Europe, the eel was shown at exhibitions, and people considered it a real monster. But thanks to science, we now know how this fish generates electricity. The eel's body contains electrical organs. There are thousands of disc-shaped cells called electrocytes all over its body. When the eel wants to fight off an enemy or attack its prey, its brain sends a signal that passes through the whole nervous system and gets into the electrical organ. Electrocytes are instantly charged with electricity and release it. Individually, these cells are weak, but what's peculiar about this organ is that it provides a charge to all cells at the same time. They create an electric field around the eel, which scatters in different directions and stuns all living things nearby. In 1800, the way eels accumulate electricity inside them inspired an Italian physicist, Alessandro Volta, and helped him create the world's first battery. At the time, he called his invention a voltaic pile, and the unit of measurement of electric potential was named after the scientist himself, the Alessandro. Wait a minute, no, volt, that's it. Anyway, still Volta couldn't understand why the electric field didn't touch the eel itself. More than 200 years later have passed since then, and science still can't explain this phenomenon. It's possible the charge is released very quickly and doesn't have time to touch the eel. Also, there's a theory that during the strike, eels bend their body in a certain position that allows them to avoid getting struck. But there are cases when eels accidentally hurt themselves. Electrical shock is not the only superpower this fish has. It can create a very weak electric field to detect its prey. Almost every animal on the planet has electroreceptors. Thanks to them, they can feel barely perceptible electrical signals. Thus, the eel, like a sonar, locates its prey. After that, it releases a stronger charge to immobilize its target before attacking. There are about 350 species of fish that can generate electrical discharges, but the most powerful is the eel. Some creatures, such as the elephant fish, use this ability to detect predators and hide from them. The charge in their organs is not enough to attack, but still sufficient to recharge a small battery by 2/3. One of the weirdest fish releasing an electric discharge is the stargazer fish. To see it, we need to dive to the bottom of the ocean. Now, look very carefully. Among the ocean sand and rocks, you can distinguish the faint outlines of big eyes and a creepy mouth. Now, that's not me. The face looks like an imprint of some sinister creature, but it's the real face of a stargazer. The fish merges with the seafloor to catch prey. It has eyes, nostrils, and mouth on the top of its face, all in the same place. It buries itself in the sand, opens its mouth, and waits for little fish to swim by. Organs that produce electricity are behind the stargazer's eyes. The fish uses them to protect itself from predators. The shock confuses the enemies, and the stargazer has time to swim away. And not only sea dwellers can generate electricity. Let's go to lush green meadows to see them. Bees fly and work hard here. These creatures flap their wings so fast that they generate an electrical pulse. Look how a bee flies up to a flower, pollinates it, and leaves a faint electric trace on it. If another bee gets to this flower, it will notice the electric mark, understand that this flower has been harvested already, and try another one. In the jungles of Madagascar, Africa, and Australia, you can meet the gecko, one of the most tenacious lizards in the world, which can climb on any surface. If we look closely at the structure of their feet, we'll see hundreds of tiny bristles on them. These bristles are divided into hundreds of smaller bristles, and these microscopic hairs cling to any surface so close that its molecules mingle with the gecko's and create an electromagnetic charge. Some spiders can even fly using the Earth's electric field. During and after a thunderstorm, charged electric particles appear in the sky. Spiders climb a tree or a tall blade of grass and release their webs. The silk gets electrified and raises, and the spider gets thousands of miles away and rises to the heights where passenger airplanes fly. Besides, spiders use electricity to catch prey. They cover their web with a special glue with electrostatic properties. This glue is immediately attracted to any objects that fly in the air. Thanks to this ability, the prey is very easily entangled and gets stuck inside the silk. The oriental hornet has pigments that work just like solar panels do. The hornet absorbs the sun's rays and converts them into energy. Almost all living creatures have an electrical potential. You, watching this video, holding a cup of tea in your hands, or talking to someone. This all happens because your brain sends a signal to your nervous system, and this signal is electrical. You go to the gym, lift heavy dumbbells, squat with a barbell, and all your muscles are contracted with the help of an electric charge. This energy is present in almost all cells. The only question is why some animals have a stronger charge, while others have a weaker one. Evolution is the answer. In the water, where visibility and audibility are bad, and where it's impossible to hide from predators or find prey, living creatures received electrosites for navigation, protection, and communication. Wow, wasn't that information shocking? Living at depths of up to 5,000 feet, the hagfish is one of the strangest creatures in the ocean. And there's plenty on the list. The goblin shark, sea spiders, red-lipped batfish, and even people swimming during winter. It's freezing, man! Get out! Although it looks like an eel, this fish belongs to the Agnatha species. That's fish without jaws, and the family also includes lampreys, terrifying monsters with disc-shaped suction cup mouths filled with spiraling rows of teeth. Hagfish have 2 tongues, 4 hearts, and no eyes or stomach, like something from another planet. And what sets them apart from anything on this planet is that they have a skull but no spine. They don't have bones either. That unique spineless skull is made entirely out of cartilage, the same stuff in your ears and nose, that's right. Scaleless with skin that seems to fit over them like an oversized holiday sweater. It'd be a mistake to think this frail little creature would be an easy dinner. They've evolved to escape from other fish like Houdinis of the deep. And the trick is slime. Lots of it. When something tries to gobble them up or gets just too close for comfort, hagfish release a protein from the holes lining their sides. When this stuff meets the surrounding water, it balloons dramatically, as in 10,000 times. The more water touches it, the bigger this goo ball gets. A teaspoon of hagfish slime can turn into a bucketful in a second. It instantly clogs the gills of any fish trying to chomp down on our slimy friend, even sharks. But hagfish have gills too. So why doesn't the slime block their own? Easy peasy. This hagfish will simply tie itself into a knot and scrape the slime off its body. Doesn't mean their slime comes without inconveniences. Sometimes it gets in the hagfish's tiny nose. To get rid of it, they make themselves sneeze, sort of. Gesundheit. This fish's homemade goo is made of flexible strands that are surprisingly strong, as in stronger than nylon. Imagine falling into a pool of the stuff. You'd struggle to move your arms and legs to swim. It might feel like rubber bands tying you up. But you'd be perfectly safe as long as the stuff doesn't get in your nose or throat. In that case, you'd be as unfortunate as those gilled creatures trying to bite into the slimy fish. And hey, our own species is eyeballing it for loads of potential uses, from parachutes to cars and even clothing. Forget about diving in a pool of this goo. You could be wearing a slime suit in the future. But when it comes to landish creatures, the platypus is just as weird. This mammal has a duck bill, a beaver tail, webbed feet, and lays eggs. Like a lot of fish, the platypus and its relative, the echidna, have no stomach, but they don't need one. They store their food in their cheeks until they surface. Once they've eaten, the food goes straight to their gut. Just when the platypus couldn't get any stranger, they also sweat milk for their platypups. When winter has put bears, bats, snakes, and even myself into hibernation, there's one animal that does things a little differently. During the cold season, the wood frog lets itself freeze, sometimes for up to 7 months. Like a brown popsicle, they fill their body with a syrupy au naturel antifreeze to stop crystals from forming. And when the right time comes, they can just thaw themselves out, even multiple times a season. These frogs will find a nice covered area in the forest and wait until spring comes. Once they're thawed, they'll hop away like nothing happened at all. When your name's the boxer crab, you have to live up to it. Ding ding! Round 1! This little crab is super smart. It has sea anemones living in its claws, and these DIY boxing gloves pack a punch. Carrying around these little tentacled sea creatures helps this tiny crab defend itself against fish and anything bigger than it. When feeling disturbed, the crab starts swinging and its gloves start stinging. The tentacles of sea anemones are covered in stinging cells that help the animal capture its lunch. Yep, that's no plant, it's a hungry beast. It's a win-win relationship. For helping the crab protect itself, the gloves get a fun ride around the ocean floor and free meals. Its other names don't sound as tough, but I assure you, the pom-pom or cheerleader crab looks cute but shouldn't be messed with. If you're afraid of spider webs, this is one to avoid. Darwin's bark spider is an orb weaver type that creates a jaw-droppingly large web for a penny-sized spidey. The silk in its web is 10 times stronger than Kevlar and double the strength of any other spiders on the planet. And the webs themselves can be as big as a king-size bed. Not that you'd want to sleep in one. Their web bridges are even more impressive. They can be over 80 feet long. The spiders build them across rivers to catch bugs flying over the water, or you rafting down the rapids. Watch out! And here I thought I spent too much time on the web. Gone to the beach on a hot sunny day when you realize you're out of sunblock. Hey, just do what hippos do. When they sweat, they create their own sunscreen. Living in the water for most of its life, a hippo's skin must stay wet to keep hydrated. When they do have to venture out of the water, something strange happens. The red or pink color we sometimes see on hippos are little beads of fluid that absorb the sun's UV and protect the skin from burning. They're also highly acidic to help stop bacteria growing on the skin. Hippos might look big and clumsy, but they could easily outrun and outswim the best Olympic athletes out there. Must be why the ancient Greeks called them hippopotamus, the river horse. Now, when you're a plant, it's hard to defend yourself, but not for the acacia tree. It has built-in bodyguards, ants. When a few of the leaves are getting nibbled on, the vibrations alert the ant brigade to head out and stop the trespasser. Living in the hollow thorns of the branches, the acacia ants come out and shock the hungry animal with their wasp-like stinger. The tree is so grateful to the ants that it feeds them yummy nectar. Not only do the ants stop animals from grazing too much, they also help improve the tree's health by reducing the bacteria that would be on the leaves. Now, never heard of a sea squirt? I don't recommend getting too close unless you want water in your face. The sea squirt may look like an underwater plant, but it's an animal more closely related to us than a cockroach. These squishy little creatures are in an umbrella category with vertebrates, like you, me, and anyone or anything else with a fancy backbone. That big happy family is called the chordates. Starting as little tadpole-like larvae, sea squirts wiggle around in the ocean for a short time until they find a nice bit of water to call their own. Since they're unable to feed themselves, drastic measures must be taken, and I mean drastic. Like oysters, barnacles, and mussels, the sea squirt has a glue-like substance that cements it to the first place it lands. Once they've picked their forever home, they need to start eating. The first thing to go is their own tail. Then they absorb their gills and even their brain. No longer need the ability to navigate the ocean, it's become unnecessary. They're not heartless, though. The sea squirt's ticker is very similar to a human's. It even looks a little like ours. Now, here's one you won't forget. Lobsters, crayfish, and crabs have teeth in their stomachs. After they gulp something down, the food in their stomach gets ground up by large teeth. This is called gastric milling, and it helps the crustaceans digest it easier. One species of crab had to take it a step further, of course. The ghost crab uses these teeth not only for eating, but also to growl. By grinding their tummy teeth when scared or struggling with another crab, they're warning to get away. Well, when you don't have vocal cords, stomach growling will have to do. They're also the fastest type of crab on the planet. They can move 100 body lengths per second. That'd be like you running 1.5 football fields in the blink of an eye. Whoa, look at that!